This is Miss Eleanor at Relational Map, and today we are talking about what actually happens to a woman after she files for divorce at 55. Not the version she posted on social media, not the freedom narrative her friends celebrated over wine, the version that shows up 12 months later when the settlement is final, the house is sold, and the life she walked away from turns out to be considerably harder to replace than she calculated. 66% of divorces over 50 are initiated by women. That number comes from a large-scale ARP study of adults aged 40 to 79 who had been through a midlife or later divorce. 2 out of every 3 gray divorces are her decision. She files, she drives the process, and then she lives with what the process produces. A Bowling Green State University study tracking the economic consequences of gray divorce found that women experience a 45% decline in their standard of living after divorcing over 50. Men experience a 21% decline. That gap, 24 percentage points, is not a rounding error. It is the distance between inconvenience and crisis. And for women who divorce late enough to be approaching Social Security age, poverty rates run nearly double those of women who divorced earlier in life. I want to sit with these numbers before we go further because they matter to everything that follows. She did not file because she wanted to be poor. She filed because she was unhappy or bored or had convinced herself that something better was available on the other side of the paperwork. She filed because the culture around her had spent 20 years telling her that leaving a marriage that did not make her feel fully alive was an act of courage rather than a calculation with consequences. And in the months or years leading up to the filing, she probably spent very little time asking what the numbers actually look like for women in her specific situation. My name is Miss Eleanor. This is Relational Map. I am going to walk you through what the research shows and what the women who went through this wish they had understood before they signed anything. The financial reality arrives faster than she expected. During the marriage, the household ran on a combined financial infrastructure that neither person fully appreciated until it separated into 2. One mortgage became 2 rents. One set of utilities became 2. The health insurance she carried through his employer plan now costs her $800 a month on the open market. The retirement account she assumed was a shared asset turns out to be divisible in ways that leave her with significantly less than the total balance suggested. Bowling Green researchers found that the income-to-needs ratio for women over 50 drops sharply after gray divorce and does not recover at the rate it does for younger women. A woman who divorces at 35 has 20 years to rebuild her financial position through career advancement and potential remarriage. A woman who divorces at 55 has a shorter runway, a labor market that values her experience less as she ages, and a dating market that presents fewer of the financially stable partners her settlement assumed she would eventually find. She expected the settlement to function as a bridge. For many women, it functions as a one-time payout with no refills. The social infrastructure collapses in ways she did not see coming. Long marriages accumulate shared social capital. The couples they spent every New Year's Eve with. The neighbors who became friends through the children. The social circle that organized itself around the marriage as a unit and now, quietly and without drama, reorganizes itself around whoever seems more stable or more fun or more like the future rather than the past. She assumed the friends would be hers. Some of them are. But the couple friends scatter in ways that feel personal even when they are not. She finds herself at 57 building a social life from a smaller base than she had at 25, with less energy and less patience for the process of making new connections from scratch. The loneliness that arrives is not the dramatic kind, it is the ordinary kind. A Saturday afternoon with nothing to do and nobody to call who does not already have plans with their husband. Her children's response surprises her. She expected the children to support her. They are adults or nearly adults, and she assumed that raising them well had built a relationship resilient enough to survive the divorce without damage. For some women, this turns out to be true. For a significant number of others, the adult children's response to the gray divorce is more complicated than anticipated. Adult children of gray divorces frequently describe feeling their family foundation destabilized at an age when they expected it to be permanent. The parents who seemed settled turned out to be unsettled. The home they plan to bring their own children back to is being sold. Their father is in an apartment. Their mother is restarting something she thought was finished. The emotional labor of supporting both parents through the divorce falls on people who have their own marriages and their own children and their own financial pressures and who did not plan for this particular addition to their load. The relationship with her children does not necessarily break. It shifts, and the shift carries a specific quality she did not anticipate. A new carefulness in how they talk to her, a measured quality that was not there before, a sense that they are managing her rather than simply being with her. The dating market does not deliver what she imagined. This is the part of the conversation that requires the most honesty, which is probably why it gets discussed the least in the spaces where women talk to each other about divorce. She left the marriage in part with an idea about what her life was going to look like on the other side. The idea usually involves some version of meeting someone who sees her more clearly than her husband did, who is more emotionally available, more exciting, more aligned with who she has become rather than who she was at 28. The idea is real, and it is understandable, and it is also, in a significant number of cases, not what the post-50 dating market actually provides. Men who are established, grounded, and genuinely interested in mature partnership at 55 are not waiting in large numbers for women their own age who have just come through a gray divorce. The men she wants have the same expanded set of options we discussed in the first video on this channel. They are running their own calculations. And her newly single status, her divorce history, her adult children and their complications, her financial reset are all factors that enter those calculations in ways that the culture around her divorce did not prepare her for. Some women find genuine partnership after a gray divorce. This is worth saying clearly because the picture I am painting would be dishonest if I left it out. The data on regret is not universal. It describes a significant pattern, not an iron law. Women who go into the post-divorce chapter with accurate expectations, strong social support, and financial preparation navigate it with considerably more stability than those who go in with the version their divorce attorney and their most enthusiastic friends sold them. But the women who navigate it well are not the majority in the research. They are the exception. The internal accounting is harder than the external one. 12 to 18 months after the divorce is final, something specific happens in a significant number of women who initiated gray divorces. The immediate relief of the decision being made, and the momentum of the process itself, fades. The new life stops feeling like a fresh chapter and starts feeling like daily life, with all the ordinary difficulty that daily life contains. And in that ordinary daily life, with its smaller apartment and its insurance bills and its quieter weekends, she starts doing a kind of accounting she avoided during the marriage. She adds up what she had. The financial security she dismissed as materialistic when she was unhappy with him. The companionship she took for granted because it had been there every day for 23 years. The person who knew her history and could finish her sentences and remembered the names of her childhood friends. The house. The Christmases. The accumulated ordinary texture of a shared life that turned out, when she finally itemized it, to be worth considerably more than she knew while she was living inside it. She is not necessarily wishing she had stayed. Some of what drove the divorce was real and serious and not something she could have continued to live inside. But she is also no longer certain that what drove it was worth what it cost. And the uncertainty, quiet and private, and not something she discusses with the friends who celebrated the filing, sits with her in a specific way that she did not expect and does not know what to do with. If you are a man watching this who has lived through a gray divorce your wife initiated, or who is watching one develop in his own marriage right now, I want to say something to you directly. The narrative you have been given about what happened, the version where you were insufficient and she was courageous, and the life she built on the other side of the paperwork is the proof of that, is not the complete story. The complete story includes the numbers I cited at the beginning of this video and everything that follows from them. It includes the research on what actually happens to women who initiate gray divorces. And it includes the specific, quiet, private accounting that a significant number of those women conduct 12 months after the filing is final. You were not the whole problem. The marriage was not just a container for her suffering. And the version of events that required you to be the villain in order for her decision to feel justified is not the version the data supports. That does not mean the marriage was perfect or that there was nothing she needed that you failed to provide. Marriages are complicated and two people can both be right about different things at the same time. But the story that leaves you carrying all of it, that frames her departure as pure liberation and your remaining as pure stagnation, that story deserves to be examined against what the research actually shows about what happens to the people who leave. The numbers tell a different story than the narrative does, and you deserve to know what the numbers say. Drop a comment. Men, I want to know one thing. Looking back at your own situation, what did your wife think she was getting on the other side of the divorce that she did not find there? Subscribe to Relational Map. Every week, Miss Eleanor brings you the research, the data, and the honest conversation about what is actually happening between men and women at this stage of life.